Por la mañana café, por la tarde ron. Ya estamos en la calle, sal de tu balcón. Por la mañana café.
Oh, this new Elton John song is great. I still don't understand the words. Rocket Man something, something, something. It's Ask or Tell Me Anything. And in fact, the number to call is 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. I have no topics. I'm not going to say, hey, what do you think about the Super Bowl? You're going to decide what the topics are. You're going to call me at that number I just said, and we're going to talk, or we'll just sit in silence for the ensuing hour.
Hoy yo no quiero dormir, lo que quiero yo es amanecerme y beberme un galón. Por la mañana café, por la tarde ron, ya estamos en la
To a smooth ride, or maybe I'm a dog who's lost its spite. I don't expect to be treated like a fool no more. I don't expect to sleep through the night. Some people say a lie is a lie is a lie, but I say why? Why deny the obvious child? Why deny the obvious child? And I remember in a road sign, I remember in a girl when I was young. These songs are true, these days are ours, these tears are free, yeah. The cross is in the ballpark, the cross is in the ballpark. We had a lot of fun, had a lot of money.
That, of course, is I'm With Her. Kind of, a woman Americana supergroup at this point. And they're covering, I love covers. I love really interesting covers of songs. That's an oldish Paul Simon song, but they are making it very much their own, and they're doing it live too. I think so, live at a concert in Nashville. They're so good in concert that their Instagram reels of the concert stuff have become a treat in and of itself. All right, so it's Ask or Tell Me Anything, and so what you're going to do, maybe, is dial 888-720-9677. Think about it for just a second. What's really on your mind? What's really in your heart? What do you need to get out of your heart? What do you need to get off of your chest? And then please don't call me about that. No, you can. You can call me about that. 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. We're going to give you some examples, kind of how it goes. We're going to start with, are both people? One person's from Woodbridge and one person's from Woodbury. It's very complicated. We're going to begin with Evan. Evan is from one of those two places. Hi, Evan.
Hi, Colin. Thanks for taking my call.
Thrilled to do it.
So I'm a law student. I just started law school in the fall, and I've been thinking, the rule of law, where are we going to be at the end of the Trump term? And I heard you say, hey, call in today, and I just thought, what a great topic to kick around with you for a minute or two.
Yeah, first of all, I don't take this the wrong way, but I do feel kind of sorry for you. I think it's either going to be a really exciting and challenging time to be a law student and then ultimately, presumably, a lawyer, or it's going to be horrible. And the possibility that it could be just horrible is why I might feel a little bit bad for you. I think one show that we're working on here at Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Productions, one episode we're working on, is I think it's called "How Do We Know What Our Rights Are When Our Rights Keep Changing." And you sort of see what's happening out in Minneapolis. I mean, the set of rights that you might have been taught as a first-year law student earlier this year don't necessarily seem to be obtaining all the time. It's going to make up the rules as you go. And obviously, this isn't a sustainable way to run a republic. But I barely know what to say about this because it really, at any given time. Okay, let's back up. And I want to get you talking too. So I'll try to be brief here. But at any given time in the history of the Republic, there isn't necessarily a perfect consistency to law. You can see it right now. One circuit court can just view a whole set of things really differently than another circuit court. And we know even that those circuit courts have their specific leanings and compositions and, certainly go down to, to a superior court judge or to, it's the reason there's an appeals process is because there isn't a consistent automatic, circle that you can color in and say, okay, that's what the law is. That's how you'd interpret the law in this situation. But I think it has moved into, and I think this is what's occasioning your question, I think it has moved into, something closer to the realm of imperial caprice or something. It's like whatever the emperor decides the law is today, that's what it is. But I'd love to know how you're feeling about all that as a law student.
Yeah, because they hand you this book on how the system's supposed to work and stare decisis and respecting precedent and reflecting that times change. But I think reading the Constitution lately, it really has me scratching my head. Where are we going to be if ICE, pulling people over, warrantless searches, administrative warrants not signed by a judge. I took the liberty to read the federal judge's ruling recently in Texas for the father and son who were taken, and he was like, "Hey, Civics 101." It's just so glaring. Some of the stuff I see happening with my 15 weeks of legal training. I just wonder what other professionals in the field are thinking, and also if they're afraid to speak publicly about it because of retribution. There's just so much going on. And it actually, Colin, you started out saying, where I might be in a few years. I think it's going to be awesome to be a lawyer because we're in, this brave new world, this new frontier of law.
Right. And so it's like the other kind of frontier. You could be a prospector and you could find gold, or you could get shot in a saloon. And so just be unclear which thing is about to happen to you. But, I think it's really important. First of all, it's important that you're making a call like this one. And I assume that you and your fellow students sit around and talk about this stuff. And I think talking about stuff when it's stuff like this is really important because you got to kind of reality test. You got to keep noticing things that are not right. Because one of the real dangers, it is the kind of the lobster in the pot overworked metaphor, but you stop noticing things that aren't right because they just keep happening and happening and happening. I mean, I've been thinking a little bit about the term Kavanaugh stops, which is how they're describing these situations where people in Minneapolis are approached, are profiled, are, asked a bunch of questions. And it's weird that they're called Kavanaugh stops because Kavanaugh appeared to be completely wrong about what was going to happen. I mean, his basic point was they're not going to really profile. They'll need, maybe they could do, they could profile initially, but that'll get worked out pretty quickly and the person doesn't have anything to hide or anything wrong with them or whatever, it'll be over fast. I can't remember everything he said about this, but it describes something that actually isn't the case. There aren't Kavanaugh stops that go like that. There are Kavanaugh stops where they stop you because they profiled you, and then they break your window and pull you out through the window and don't listen to anything you have to say and don't care whether you've got papers that prove that you have a right to be there. They don't care about, and it's just weird that we're still calling it Kavanaugh stops because it's false advertising or something. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I know what you're saying, and to me, it's like a nonpartisan issue. It's like a constitutional issue. Full disclosure, I'm an unaffiliated voter. I vote for people. I don't follow parties. My allegiance is to America, and it just seems that, that sort of mentality is getting lost in our current political climate, and it's kind of opening this door for kind of anything goes. We'll see what happens when we get to the Supreme Court. And I just think that's a horrible way for our republic to kind of slog along.
Yeah. No, I feel the more you talk, the more hopeful I feel about the role you will play in the republic. But, I think the other thing is, there's that old thing about you're entitled to your I guess it comes from Moynihan. You're entitled to your own opinion, but not to your own facts. And I think now people feel entitled to both. I mean, I think Ketanji Brown Jackson and Brett Kavanaugh wouldn't agree from a legal perspective on on the idea of a stop. Can you stop somebody because they kind of fit a generic description of a kind of person that you think you should be able to stop? I don't think they would agree on that from a legal perspective. But the thing that's scarier is there are completely different sets of facts beyond that. I mean, Ketanji Brown Jackson presumably knows that these stops often don't go well. They kind of open a crack through which a lot of other malfeasance, law enforcement malfeasance, can seep in. And we're seeing what's happening now. People who have committed no offense and aren't breaking the law are somehow or other in detention. And Kavanaugh, maybe he's acknowledged this by now, because he seems like a not completely unreasonable person, as opposed to other members of the court.
I don't know about that. I don't know. I wouldn't go that far.
Okay. Fair enough.
I'm hopeful, though, that there are some, changes, and only time will tell. I mean, we have this looming budget deadline, and we'll see if there's some last-minute acquiescing from the party in control right now. But something tells me we're headed to another government shutdown. Mm-hmm. And we won't see any temporary changes to what's happening with the entire ICE process and temporary suspension of people's constitutional rights.
Well, on that beautiful note, and first of all, I would call again. I'd be interested to know how your journey is going towards lawyerdom and what it's like to be in law school these days. But this was never a perfect system. I would argue that it was always deeply, deeply, from its inception, a deeply, deeply impersonal system, imperfect system. But it's malfunctioning at just an unbelievable level right now. All right, we're going to go to Mike in just a second here. Let me give out the number again, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. And we're going to go to Mike right this very second. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Colin. Thanks a lot for taking my call.
Sure.
So there is a scandal going on in the United Kingdom right now, where the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, hired a guy named Peter Mandelson to be the ambassador to the U.S. And it turns out that Peter Mandelson is all over the Epstein files. So Starmer fired him, and now some members of Starmer's own party, the Labour Party, are asking him to resign, not because he himself was in the files, but because he hired this guy that was in the files. And Morgan McSweeney, Starmer's chief of staff, just resigned because he recommended to Starmer to hire this guy. So they're calling for Starmer to resign because of this. Now, jump across the pond to the United States, and Howard Lutnick, the Secretary of Commerce, is also all over the Epstein files, not to mention the president himself. I haven't heard one Republican say fire Howard Lutnick, or obviously not fire Donald Trump. So in one country, in one government, personal behavior and morality are important. In another one, they don't mean anything. Completely irrelevant. Who cares? Everybody shrugs.
Yeah, I would say the following. First of all, the British have a whole different record of political sex scandals, right? And they have kind of a different approach to it. It's a more sexually repressed society, generally speaking, I would argue. But it also has, some pretty florid and exciting sex scandals. And what I would say is, I would agree with everything that you just said. Although I think for certain words that you're using, I would maybe substitute the word shame. Shame is kind of an interesting concept anyway, but there is a point where in Britain one is shamed because of something like this, because, and the shame isn't easily contained. It spills out on the floor like milk. So you have, as you say, you have the person who actually was in Epstein world, and then you have the person who supposedly kind of vetted that person, and then you have Starmer himself, and it was a real proposition, a significant proposition that maybe Starmer would have to step down. My guess is probably make it through, but what do I know? Here, it's not clear to me what shame is anymore. I mean, I don't understand it, and you are absolutely correct that it doesn't appear as though, I mean, there certainly are people who are looking at this whole thing, and to whatever extent part of their vote for Donald Trump was, let's get to the bottom of the Epstein stuff. When I went back and I looked at what Trump would say on the campaign trail or during campaign interviews when he would be asked about the Epstein files, and the truth is, he was a little bit more equivocal than I had remembered. What he would say is stuff like, yeah, I know, I could see that happening. I could see that happening. I mean, I'm really interested in the Kennedy assassination stuff, and he'd name a couple other things, but I could see that one happening too. Sure. And and then a couple of times he said stuff like, well, certainly a lot of questions about how this guy died, right? I'm not sure I believe the story about how he died. But he didn't really ever say, I will absolutely release every last piece of paper about this stuff. And I think it's because he had some sense of the size of the whale sitting down beneath the surface of the ocean. But it is sort of weird that there isn't clearly, a sense of, well, this is so shameful that you have to get rid of Lutnick or I mean, it just really isn't clear that anybody is so afflicted with shame that's being projected onto them that they can't function anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I certainly do you have anything more to say about this odd dichotomy? Or
Well, talking about shame, I mean, all these, billionaires and captains of industry that knew that Epstein had been, sent to jail for his crimes and still buddied up to him, asked him for favors, get my kid on a crew on a Woody Allen movie. I mean, it's, they didn't, no shame. I mean, it didn't matter.
Yeah, the Noam Chomsky stuff is weird. It's almost like Noam doesn't even really quite understand what Epstein's in trouble for. And having interviewed Noam once about, I don't know, 10 years or so ago, that kind of doesn't entirely surprise me. But yes. I mean, I think what we're seeing is a world in which favors are exchanged, and they are exchanged in a way that is meant to be not public. And I want a little bit of this. Can you get me a little bit of that? I'll give you a little bit of this. And it's not a very attractive spectacle. All right, so the number, 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR, and here is Barbara in Simsbury.
Hello,
Hi.
How are you?
Good.
I said to myself, I'm not calling today, but I guess I did.
You couldn't help yourself.
I couldn't help myself.
You can't quit me.
Oh, my God. Okay, number one, the lesser of the two evils, well, who knows what it is. When people lose their jobs, federal, state, whatever, researchers, they're simply not going to be able to make their car payments. They're not going to be able to pay their mortgages. They're not going to be paying taxes into the system. So already our economic structure is weakened. And that's just at the local, even just at the local level. They're not buying groceries and spending money on clothes and toys for their kids and food. They're scrimping and having a hard time. And it's tragic. The second thing is, what's next? Those of us who have a family history of such things know about pogroms and the Warsaw Ghetto, and I think that's next.
I mean,
I really do.
Yeah, I hope you're wrong, but I understand why.
I hope I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I hope I'm wrong because my family fled Tsarist Russia for just such a thing, But I just have to say, if people are moving to Canada, what chance does the little guy have?
Right. So I do think this, that I understand why you feel the way that you do, and I see, every once in a while you'll see on some news site a map of all these kind of hastily thrown together detention centers all over the country. And some of them are being built up to be quite larger maybe than you could imagine would be necessary for the immigrant population that they want to relocate. They certainly are acting like an administration that would like to start doing this. And in some ways, they've already started doing it. And there certainly are people in these detention centers, as I was saying to Evan, who haven't done anything wrong. And they're in a detention center, which is the whole sort of Kafka thing. It's the whole kind of, middle 20th century European experience. But it's also, we were doing that stuff after 9/11, we were doing renditions to black sites and stuff. This is happening right here on our soil. And I think the most important thing is not to let it become normal. There are going to be people every day, like I read a column for Hearst, and whenever I would write columns about Trump, which is kind of almost all I write about these days because it's such an emergency, you get a lot of emails from people and they say you have TDS, which is Trump derangement syndrome, which doesn't mean what it sounds like, which is that Trump is deranged. It means that you are deranged for caring so much about Donald Trump and for thinking that he's such a danger. And I think, it's important to ignore that attempt to quiet us down. I think it's like what I was saying to Evan, too. It's good if we talk about this stuff. Like that thing happened yesterday. Is that normal? Has that ever happened before? And
Yes.
Those kinds of conversations are really, really important because otherwise we get siloed off and we start to lose track of what's
crucial.
Yeah,
it's crucial.
So, that's why we do, one of the reasons we do a show like this.
So acting kind and acting normally is probably, and speaking out when it's appropriate is probably the best chance we have.
That's the best. There are a lot of things that are good chances, and I say it all the time here, and other guests like Joanne Freeman has said it too. Making sure that our social bonds are intact, that you're sort of meeting the gaze of the person who helps you out in a store or makes your latte or whatever, and that you're just talking casually to people around your neighborhood. All these things are important. I actually think, and I'm surprised I haven't gotten a call about this topic yet. Watching that Bad Bunny halftime show yesterday, I thought that's really even more important than people think it is, because it really does present a vision of America that is vastly preferable. I mean, a vision of America where people care about each other, and there were like small businesses that we were sort of looking at, and the notion of home and the notion of place, but all kind of all presented within the context of joy and caring. And it's, I woke up this morning and I thought to myself, I wish I were waking up in the United States of Bunny instead of the United States of America right now.
I wish I had seen it. I don't have a TV.
Get on your computer and look at it. It's very nice. And it really is. I mean, we can't lose track of joy. I totally get being worried about pogroms. I get totally worried about, cell without a number, prisoner without a name kinds of stuff. I worry about us going Pinochet a lot. But I think it's also the joy that was there last night in Santa Clara in halftime. That's a very potent weapon because you are showing people a more attractive version of reality than the one they're constantly being bombarded with. Because remember this, from the time of his first inaugural address, Trump was talking about American carnage, and he was saying, this place is hell. The United States of America is a hellhole where we are overrun with violent thugs and deteriorating infrastructure and crap leaders, and what we need to do is fix all that. And it's worth doing anything. It's worth transgressing any boundary to get things fixed. His solutions don't work unless there's a nightmare-sized problem. So when somebody like Bad Bunny does something like what happened at the Super Bowl, it's kind of a reminder that, the nightmare is in Trump's head. This country is always going to have its flaws, really big, bad flaws, but it's not the kind of country that he tries to convince us that it is, and we don't need his kinds of solutions. All right, we're going to take a quick break. The number is 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR.
everybody hates when they get to that part when they realize that I don't want to tell you I don't care, but if it seems like I don't care, it doesn't mean I don't care. It just looks like I don't care. Because my emotions have been sanded off. I live in LA, sweetie. What do you expect?
Stand in line until you think you have the time to spend an evening with me. And if we go someplace to dance, I know that there's a chance you won't be leaving with me. Oh, yeah. Then afterwards we drop into a quiet little place and have a drink or two. And then I go and spoil it all by saying something stupid like I love you. I can see it in your eyes that you despise the same old lies you heard the night before.
That's Nora Jones and Chris Ulm. I guess she has a podcast where sometimes they just like break into song, or I don't know that. It seemed like as the thing just turned up on my feed and I was trying to figure out what it was, because this obviously years and years ago was quite a hit for Frank Sinatra and his daughter Nancy. I believe they're the ones who sang it. And I think it was one of those songs Sinatra didn't think was very good, but I actually think it's maybe a better song than people give it credit for. It seemed a little cloying at the time, Frank and Nancy, but good singers can make things sound good. All right, we're going to go back to the phones here. The number's 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR, and let's go to Chris in New Haven. We've also got Mark in Oxford and Steve in Glastonbury. Okay, and we got you, too, if you call that number, 888-720-WNPR. Go ahead, Chris. You have the floor.
Hi, Colin. How are you?
Just fine.
So I've been listening to you for a while, and I heard some of your earlier guests, and I just wanted to call because I thought there's an important topic, well, three important topics that haven't been discussed as much when in regards to Trump and whatnot, and that's the economy, and the economy. Mm-hmm. And I think, frankly, that, it's something that doesn't really get the acknowledgement it deserves when it comes to the reality of what people look for when it comes to someone like Trump. I mean, I happen to be of the persuasion that Trump isn't the disease, he's the symptom of the disease. I mean, the disease is I see the disease, and many others do. I'm 28, and I find this to be much more common among younger people, as they see the disease being the American economic system, the disease being the system of wealth inequality and unequal distribution of wealth that has largely driven more and more people into poverty. I mean, the American middle class doesn't exist anymore in reality. We have an upper middle class, a very small one, and a large lower middle class. And I think that when one takes a historical perspective, whether it's America or anywhere else in the world, it's important to note that when people face more and more dire economic situations, right, when they don't feel financially secure, when they don't feel that they or their family's future is secure, then you find them more and more willing to disregard concepts of social norms or civil, or legal proceedings or so on and so forth. I mean, this is constantly something that comes up in history. And, the reality is that Trump has always represented to a lot of people change from that. And, I don't support, and many others don't support, obviously, what he does. We all know that he's lying when he talks about lowering prices. He's lying when he's talking about making things more affordable. I mean, he's, a billionaire who's made his entire career scamming people. And I think that it's worth noting, though, that until we fix our economic system, until we bring back, support for labor unions, for social programming, for public housing, and all of these other things that can uplift the most impoverished members of society, you're going to constantly get those who seek solutions elsewhere, who are vulnerable to this kind of, the pseudo-fascist ideology that Trump really represents.
I think you're very right about a lot of this, and I have so many things that I want to I want to say that I almost don't know where to begin. It does remind me at the beginning of his first campaign. Reminds me of being at one of his rallies. I was covering one of his rallies, but he would always be late for the rallies, so you had a lot of time to talk to the people who showed up there. And one of the things that really surprised me, but then when I thought about it more, it didn't surprise me. So this probably would have been late 2015, early 2016. So the Republican field is still there. It's, Marco Rubio and Jeb Bush and Carly Fiorina and I don't know who else. Like all those people who were at the kind of big long debates. They were still in the hunt. And I remember talking to these Trump supporters who liked him enough to be at a rally. So that's a high level of commitment. And I asked them who their second choice was, and it was almost invariably Bernie Sanders. And I think it was almost invariably Bernie Sanders for the reasons that you're suggesting, Chris, which is these people want to change. They wanted change. They wanted somebody who was talking about a significant radical form of change, not just a little bit of jiggling the toilet handle here, but, really redistributing power and assets in a different way. And even if there was an implied period of chaos that might go along with that. I think the Democrats made a gigantic mistake in nominating Hillary Clinton, who just didn't seem like a vehicle for change of any time. First of all, she lived in the White House for 8 years. So, how much of a change is that? But, she'd been taking all those huge speakers fees from Goldman Sachs and all those kinds of things. And Trump is, to me, a persuasive vehicle for change because, and this is the second thing I want to say, and I think you already know this, but he's not really kind of on a one-to-one correspondence basis a point person for the goals of American business. He causes way too much chaos for that. I've been a journalist a long time now, and I've had lots of chances to talk to and observe people in business. And I always say, those people, they don't really care if the sun comes up in the west tomorrow and sets in the east. They just want to know. They want about 4 hours notice. They want to know before everybody else knows that that's going to happen. And this is a very chaotic, unpredictable environment where you've got these, imagine that you work for a defense contractor and you're halfway into a massive arms contract with another country, and suddenly there's a 37% tariff on a country that came out of nowhere. This is a very difficult environment. And that's why, and so because he's not a particularly supple or subtle thinker, it's why you get the phenomenon that's called taco, Trump always chickens out.
Yeah.
And what that really means is the only thing he does, he looks at the markets, and I'm sure other people talk to him too. But the minute the market, because it's like he's not really able to absorb a lot of information, granular information about the economy, the way that you're talking about it. But the minute the markets are going, oh, crap, then he goes, oh, crap, and he just backs off whatever he's doing. And so that's kind of become a dead man's switch, I don't think it's a very reliable one, but I think you're right that until somebody comes along with a more meaningful, I don't know whether it's some kind of Ezra Klein abundance thing or what, but some kind of meaningful way of talking to people. This election was probably lost, and I'd like to know what you think about this. But I think this past election, it was lost a number of different ways. But I think maybe the biggest way is people your age who have been working hard. Maybe they went to college, maybe they didn't, maybe they went to graduate school, maybe they didn't. But wherever they were, they'd been working pretty hard for quite a few years, and there was no viable, discernible, plausible way for them to make a sufficient down payment on a house. Which is kind of like a basic kind of American idea that you're going to buy a little starter home somewhere. And that was just as far away from their grasp as it had been 6 years before, despite all of what they felt was their hard work. And Chris, I feel like that's really true. And the failure to provide a persuasive and real narrative about changing it really substantially altered the 2024 election. But your thoughts, please.
Yes, I'd have to say I agree with that. In the essence that you were right that I think it was a enormous mistake for the Democratic Party to choose Hillary Clinton in 2016. And of course, the debacle of 2024. I mean, that can be laid almost exclusively at the feet of the Democrats and the Biden administration.
Yep.
I mean, Joe Biden refusing to drop out despite calls from pretty much everyone and their mother to get him to stand down, and then him ordaining Kamala Harris as his successor without a primary. I mean, that was virtually unprecedented in, modern American primary history. So, I mean, and then her refusing to virtually distance herself at all from the Biden administration. I mean, it's reminiscent of 1968, where after President Johnson refused to accept his party's nomination, and then we saw what happened after that. I mean, historically, I wasn't around then, but I think that at the end of the day, I'm of the perspective that somebody like a Bernie Sanders or somebody like, here in the Northeast, a Zoran Mamdani, they do cross quote unquote party lines, because at the end of the day, I don't think the party lines are as strongly defined as some people tend to think they are. I think that people tend to approach things in a more pragmatic, material-oriented sense more often than not.
Also, I think your generation, if you're in your 20s, you don't have the habit of party, I think when you're in your 20s, first of all, the first decision you have to make is, am I going to vote the way my parents voted? So some people, they just wind up doing that. Some people, my parents were Goldwater Republicans, so I clearly didn't do that. So that's the first decision that you make. And then the next decision you make is, okay, what are my political beliefs? And do they exist in the form of one of the recognizable major parties, or am I going to have to kind of hunt and peck through the election process? Chris, I hate to not extend this conversation, but I'm actually hitting some time posts here, and other people waited to get on the air. But fascinating call, Chris. Thank you very much. And Mark and Steve and Todd, we will get to you after this break.
It's always been a pleasure to for better, for baby. We'll know whatever it's worth in the end. In between awake and sleeping, when the door opens to dreaming, that's when the music starts playing, that's when the words come to me, and I leap from the dream to catch it, but by then it has run away. So it is this fear of losing every time I finally lay. Oh, did I waste my time lying in the sun like it comes so easy, and everything's just for me? Life's a big old cherry tree, chasing rainbows and staying high, and nothing gonna take me down. I am so me now.
And it's time to say some thank yous. We'll start with the maestro Dylan Reyes, who picked out that song to come into this segment and did many other things besides. Joe Koss and his TV crew. Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Productions is the people making the show possible. That would be in the form of Lily Tyson, the ruthless CEO. Meg Fitzgerald is handling your calls today. So thanks to all of you, everybody who works on this, and thanks to all of you for listening. But we got some time left here on Ask or Tell Me Anything. So we're going to just zip through a few calls here. I'm just going to take them in the order they're sitting on the board here. We'll start with Mark. Hi, Mark.
Hi, Colin. How are you?
I am just fine.
I thought I'd lighten up the subject matter because everybody's on the politics crying game. Do you know who Bobby Skoronsky is?
Bob Skoronsky?
I
I know that name. It's a little bit before my time as a Green Bay Packers fan. My time began when Dan Devine was coaching the team. And if you recall back in those days, he was a college coach who moved over to coach the Green Bay Packers. And one of his earlier games, I think it was John Brockington, but some massive running back got pushed out of bounds and broke the coach's leg, so that he was actually coaching from a wheelchair for the rest of the season. And I thought, well, I'm a Red Sox fan. I kind of get that, like that works for me. The coach has got a broken leg. But so Skoronsky's a little bit before my day, but, just Packers-wise, I know that name.
All right. Well, back in the heyday, 67 through 69, I think, he was offensive tackle. He's from Derby, Connecticut.
That's right,
Went to high school with my mother. Circa 1969, I was a freshman, enamored of football. Went to a sport night in Ansonia, I believe, and they had like 6 or 7 pros. I got my good football signed, which my best friend kicked out and got run over by a cement truck and popped. I saved it for years, but I also got 2 programs signed by the likes of Bob Skoronsky, Ray Nitschke, Hall of Fame, Dave Robinson, outside linebacker, Hall of Fame, and a bunch of others. I got 2 programs. If I can find them in my mother's attic, she's 96, one of them's yours.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you so much for that offer, Mark. I feel as though, I sort of missed that set of glory years. So nice to hear about that anyway. All right, we're going to go to Steve in Glastonbury. Hi, Steve. You have the floor.
Hi, Colin. How are you today?
Just fine.
Okay, so the first caller sparked a nagging question that I've had for quite a while now. So, there's been, as far as the rule of law goes, there's been numerous disregard for that with the present administration. So, take for instance, when the Georgia ballot box just got seized by the federal government. Why, whoever was, in charge of that, why didn't they just call the governor, and the governor call the state police and say, clearly, this is against the law. No, you can't have it. Instead of after the fact, it's gone. Anything can happen now. And, put back the pieces. I mean, did they have a subpoena? Did they? I don't know how it works. But.
Yeah, first of all, I don't think we know all the details of that story. I would say Brian Kemp in general has been pretty good about not taking crap from Trump, or at least around the electoral process of his state. Obviously, Raffensperger and those people were even more, hardcore about not letting stuff like that happen. I think probably in this case, they may have really caught everybody unprepared. And, first of all, Michael Che said it so well on Weekend Update. He goes, just let it rest. Let it be. I think Che goes, even Hitler gave up on getting into art school at a certain point. But the idea that he's still pounding this drum, of course, he's still pounding this drum for a very specific reason, not because he cares about it so much as if he can prove or appear to have proven that there's something fraudulent about the 2020 election, he has lots more excuses to do things authoritarian about the 2026 election. So, and the 2028 election for that matter, if he's around for it. But, I think that's the reason. But you're asking good questions. I think part of the problem is, though, you have maybe a fast move. You get the director of national intelligence there. You could Tulsi Gabbard. What is she doing there? And they may have just kind of overwhelmed the opposition there, and take the stuff and get out of there before anybody can figure out what to do about it. But yeah, to your point, to Evan's point, to everybody's point, this is really not how our society is supposed to run. And the Constitution does grant the states the right to run their elections. The idea of nationalizing an election is, constitutionally speaking, not a thing. So yeah, I think.
Where was law enforcement?
Don't know the answer to that. Yeah. I mean, I'm assuming we'll get a little bit more of a TikTok. You should pardon the expression. Not the new kind of TikTok, but the old kind of TikTok where they take you through the time sequence about how that happened. But we don't know it yet. We don't know everything that went on. We don't, at least I haven't seen that article yet where they really sort of tell you all the different moves that got made. All right. So here's Todd. Todd has called before about this topic about which I intend to remain somewhat evasive, but let's just see how things go. Hi, Todd.
Hi, Colin. Yeah, I actually called a few weeks ago, and I actually asked if what you thought about the Gilmore Girls, the actual TV program, and then but you actually answered a question of what you thought about the podcast. I was just wondering. Apparently, the lady screening the calls thinks you might not have ever seen the program. I'm just wondering if you have seen it, and if you what you thought of the actual program itself.
Meg, you're not supposed to tell people things like that.
See, I that was my theory as well. That why because I think in email.
Oh, maybe Robin. Yeah, maybe it was Robin who told. There's so many leaks here. There's so, I got to tighten up the leaks around here. There's like too much information getting out, about what I've watched and what I haven't watched. First of all, Todd, I want to apologize. I know you've written me, I think maybe 2 fairly long emails, and I haven't written back to you. And I really do. I do typically. No, that's sort of not me. I don't think anyway. I typically try to get back to people. Now I'm going to whine and beg for your mercy. But I just have gone through these 2 cataract surgeries, and it's just a little bit harder for me to I'm getting used to my.
Doesn't respond to my emails either. So.
Yeah. Well, no, I think your family often write to me actually, and they say, we know that that Todd likes your show. Why is Todd so obsessed with Gilmore Girls? And I don't know the answer to that. You should talk to him. So I'm going to be. It would be more funny if I was evasive, but I think I'm just going to. Too tired to be evasive. I'm just going to lie down in the road here and say, no, I have never actually watched the Gilmore Girls.
All right, okay.
I've never watched the Gilmore Girls. I feel like I've absorbed some of it kind of ambiently, like just through my pores. I think some Gilmore Girls got in. And then certainly, during the making of the podcast, the Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Productions podcast, there was almost like a contact high happening, like I really was getting pretty excited about the Gilmore Girls, even though I've never actually seen the Gilmore Girls.
Right.
But I know there's somebody named Rory on the show. That's been my big accomplishment so far. But it was an excellent podcast, and I would recommend it to anyone interested in the subject.
Yeah, no, I listened to it. It actually comes up when you get the look on the WNPR page. It actually comes up advertising it right at the top every time you open it up. So.
That was a deal that was made when we were acquired by Lily Tyson Quality Entertainment Productions. I think that was part of the settlement. But yes, so I don't know. Have we laid this matter to rest, or are there still some loose ends?
Yeah. I won't harangue you anymore via email or.
Well, you can harangue me. Just don't get too attached. No, I really feel terrible for not writing back. I mean,
that's fine. That were just that's no problem.
I will say this. I do try to write back most of the time to people. I'm a little bit behind. I do also have, I think probably at the moment in my colin@ctpublic.org. So where you can send me an email and possibly have me not respond to it. Colin, just my name, COLIN, @ctpublic.org. I believe there are 94,000 emails. Apparently our system really starts to get nervous when you have 100,000 emails, or when you're approaching. I think maybe, in fact, the whole building blows up or something if I hit 100. So when it starts to get up towards the mid-90s, they let me know. But most of those are just from publicity companies, PR people trying to get me to put some guest on the air. It's not really from regular people. When real people write, I really do try to write back. Except there's one guy who writes to me, I would say 3 times a week, about every conspiracy that he started out with vaccines, but now he's on to like there really were 2 Paul McCartneys and stuff like that. I mean, I really enjoy his emails, but I'm never writing back to him. All right, we have to go. Thank you so much for listening today. We will be back with a whole week of fun shows starting tomorrow.